I'd like to call the March 21st meeting of the Johnston County Board of Commissioners to order. Welcome everyone that's here tonight and those viewing at home on YouTube. As is customary, we will start our meeting with the prayer and the pledge. I've asked Commissioner Dickie Browswell to lead us in the prayer and Commissioner Ted Godwin to lead us in the pledge. So if you would, please stand.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day that you've given us today. Thank you for the opportunity to live in the freest country in the world and to enjoy the freedoms that are bestowed upon us every day. May we, as we work here tonight, make decisions that are in the best interest of our county and all that we do. May we endeavor to always remember that we serve the citizens of this county. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me with hands over heart or salute in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated.
Got too many microphones over here, Mr. Chairman.
All right. The first item on the agenda is approval and/or discussion of the agenda. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the agenda be approved as presented.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Agenda is approved. The next item is the consent agenda, and you have in front of you 6 items. Approval of the February 21st minutes, some budget revisions for the Moccasin Creek District, social services, some appointments to the Johnston County Board of Health, Davis Park leasing, an amendment to that EDIG agreement, and we have the North Carolina Railroad Build Ready Site Grant, and then Public Utilities, a bulk water purchase agreement, proposed amendment number 2, Wayne County Sanitary Districts. Any discussion or any items need to be pulled from the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the agenda as published.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Well, I mean, that was a raw motion.
I thought you said to accept. I heard you say accept. I don't know what you said.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I heard. Yeah.
To accept the consent
Yes.
agenda items, Madam Clerk.
There we go. All right. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
The consent agenda is approved. Next up, we have public comments. And before folks start coming up, I did want to make a little statement as kind of the rules for making public comments. Any audience member that wishes to address the board on an item not already on the agenda may come forward at this time. Please state your name and the general location of where you live. Speakers are allowed 3 minutes to express what they want to tell us, and ask them to maintain proper decorum and make sure their comments are in a civil manner. We will not tolerate personal attacks. And just remember that this is a time for public comment, that the board will not respond to comments other than maybe to direct staff if there's something that we need to direct staff to do. So with that, I will ask anybody who would like to come forward. Again, please state your name. Mr. Minton, state your name and where you're from.
Okay, where's the button for the, oh, it's on, good,
It's on, yeah.
Thank you. Boy, this is mighty close. My name is Tim Minton. I live in Clayton, North Carolina. I've been a longtime resident of Johnston County. Excited to be here tonight, and thank you for a few moments to speak. A couple of weeks ago, I started receiving calls from, first of all, I'm the Executive Vice President for the North Carolina Home Builders Association, and several weeks ago, started receiving calls from some of our builder members here in Johnston County, more so concerned in the sense of the period that it was taking for the septic permits to be approved. Johnston County was doing an outstanding job in the sense of embracing new ways to do it, being able to use soil scientists for that. It was our understanding that they were informed a couple weeks ago that the process that Johnston County had been following, that they were not allowed to follow that process anymore. So obviously it created some concern within our members. Johnston County currently is got about a 4-month backlog when it comes to septic permit inspections. Obviously, part of it's due to the growth in Johnston County. What I'm here tonight is first and foremost to offer our assistance in the sense we would love to work with the county to see if we can come up with some solutions, some very quick solutions. Johnston County is doing a fabulous job when it comes to economic development in terms of bringing companies to Johnston County, but as part of that, you got to have housing. And unfortunately, if it's taking 4 months to get a septic tank permit, that's going to create a huge backlog here in Johnston County. And so first and foremost, we're here tonight to offer our assistance, especially if it's from a legislative front. Currently, there is a law on the books dealing with COVID, and we're still under executive order with the governor that using soil scientists, you're allowed to use soil scientists for that inspection part, but that's going to change at some point here soon. And we want to make sure that we get up front in terms of Johnston County having the resources they need. Inspections are receipt-based. So basically, they're based on fees, so we're not here tonight to ask for additional funds from the county, but in terms of what we can to apply those funds, whether it's to increase compensation for folks who are here now or to add more staff to be able to do this. Rowan County did this recently, and they were able to take care of the backlog they had because they got more aggressive when it came into this arena in terms of paying higher salaries and actually going out recruiting from other counties. Not that I would advocate that all the time, but since Johnston County is obviously the best place to live and work, we want to see how many folks we can get. And I'll sort of end on this. In new construction, every new home creates 3 jobs. And in new construction, every new home has about 80 subcontractors working on that construction project. And, you know, we want to do everything we can to make sure that that money's coming to folks in Johnston County and that obviously the tax base increases. And so we want to do everything we can to speed up this process so we can finish those houses that are already been started. So that's pretty much my comments.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Hester, will you get with Mr. Minton and see if we, anytime somebody's coming and offering to help with solutions, let's see if we can figure that out. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Minton.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Mr. Hodges. Good to see you again.
My name is Timothy Hodges, 347 South Moore Street, Clayton, North Carolina. Seems like we're going to get all the Tims out of the way early. I want to thank, I don't know if it's appropriate to call his name, but I want to thank the commissioner who made the comment to Justice News, March 7th, 2022 edition, and his advice was a welcome. We've heard many good things about him. He don't seem to mind taking on the hard issues. He said he's a good commissioner. I'll be glad when we get to hear from some of the other commissioners soon. But, you know, I guess it came to, in some of his advice, he spoke on political philosophies. And the spirit of the petition, you know, was pretty much on fairness. For myself, you know, I'm not a Democrat, not a Republican, not an independent, not liberal, not conservative. I guess if I would define myself, I would call myself a healthy capitalist. A healthy capitalist. What I mean by that is that I want to be rich, but I want to sleep good at night. And the thing about sleeping good at night is fairness. Being fair in your living and in your dealings, they have to sleep good at night. And that's the spirit of my petition. You know, what I believe is fair. I don't think it's fair that a candidate can get 100% of the votes in his district and still lose the election. I don't believe it's fair that 7 candidates can win the votes in all their districts and still lose the election. I just don't feel that it's fair. I mean, it's not the process. And this is the spirit of the petition. And this is what I wanted to share with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hodges.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Taylor? Good to see you again as well.
Thank you. Kenneth Taylor. I'm in the county between Clayton and Wilson's Mills.
Clayton's getting a little too close, but this may be a little in violation of your rules, but I did have a comment on 2 items upcoming that I don't see any public discussion option for. It's regarding broadband, the 2
So,
broadband.
yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, I don't know how we'd work that in, but since you're up there, let's
I'll work it in.
work it in, yeah.
Last year, the county hired a consultant, did a big study of our broadband, what we have, where it is, what we need, where it is, and a gap analysis of what we got to do to get things right. There's 2 items coming up on the agenda for Brightspeed and Charter Spectrum wanting to get some great grant money to expand into the county. I'm just trusting that the needs that we've identified, and we know this better than most counties in the state, that these needs have been compared with what these companies propose to do, make sure that we're addressing the real needs. As far as the companies, Brightspeed now owns CenturyLink, or in a couple months. I would like to see a commitment from them that they will not abandon their old, long-time loyal customers. It's happened in many places in the country. The old telecos don't want to maintain or upgrade their own equipment, their old equipment, and so their customers have been with them for years suffer. I've got to say CenturyLink's been very good at maintaining the system, even when the DOT grass cutters not only knock over a pedestal but grind it off with the mower. They had that line rerouted and run and repaired in a day, and I hope to see that going forward. I would like to see them upgrading service where the current service is, not just going into new areas that maybe get the best grant money. I started out on the internet with dial-up with Carolina Telephone about '94, I guess. That became Sprint and then Embark. Eventually Embark came out with DSL in my area, which was a tremendous improvement. I still have that with CenturyLink. It's been very reliable, but it's expensive, and it's not broadband by anybody's definition. They talked about the concept of dark fiber in this study, which, as I understood, if you have a fiber line that's already in the ground and there's capacity or people are not using it, it's kind of a waste. It's there, let's use it. Level 3 Communications, 3 years ago, ran lines between all the schools in Johnston County. The cable line, the fiber line, I thought I said cable fiber, the fiber line runs, I think, up to Wilson's Mills Elementary. I don't know where else it would go up that way. They're not using but a tiny fraction of that capacity. Level 3 was bought by CenturyLink, is now going to be Brightspeed. Let's get a commitment from them. Look into that. Can they utilize some of that? It goes by a lot of people in the county. Brighten it up. So hope for the best with Brightspeed going forward. Well, I've been a customer 38 years now with the same, whoever happens to own that line. The second company, Charter Spectrum, I sent some comments by email, but I think it's important they be heard. Last summer, they extended a line. It was the old Time Warner line that went into the Edinburgh subdivision. They ran that a mile or so down Gordon Road to the Ellis Bend subdivision, pick up a few more houses there, as well as make it available on the road. They did not keep tabs on the contractor. They made a terrible mess of the road. They did not remediate it in accordance with their DOT encroachment permit. I know, I got a copy of the permit from DOT. They placed equipment on private property, again in violation of the permit, and Spectrum was not keeping an eye on these people. They moved the box off my yard when I offered to move it for them. I thought, well, at least now I've got an option for internet. I was quoted 3 times $49 a month for the basic service. That is not their actual cost. That's apparently some teaser rate. The neighbor at the subdivision just got his second $10 a year increase, $10 a month increase in 2 years. So he's now up to $69 a month for the same service. The company should be upfront about that. If it's an intro rate, and we see that a lot with all these cable TV and phone and everything, but be upfront about it. The most egregious activity by Spectrum has been the robocalls. They started end of August, beginning of September, when that line was available. I get 2 or 3 a day, every day. My number's been on the do not call registry since the day it started. I've told these people repeatedly they're making illegal phone calls. It's a call center boiler room operation. The numbers are spoofed, which I think is also a violation of law. I do know the real numbers. I recounted to you. I cussed out one of them one night. He got mad, called me back with his desk phone. So I have the real number that they're coming from, and I can call that, and it answers Spectrum promotion department. So I would strongly object to my county tax dollars being given to this company to go out and grub for my federal tax dollars until they clean up their act and are a business that Johnston County would want to do business with. Lastly, when the county gives an economic incentive grant, you're always very particular about making sure the company meets those commitments to put up a building, to hire a given number of workers and so forth. Let's make sure that we keep tabs on these great grant people before they get county money, should you decide to give them some, that they meet their commitments. Because there's a generality, but the legacy phone and cable companies in this country not have a good reputation at following through on commitments they make after they take the taxpayer's dollar. And Johnston County's been good about that through your other incentive programs. Let's do it here too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Taylor. I think maybe you'll get some of the answers to some of your questions in there here with the next couple of items.
Some scammers are making all these robocalls trying to sign people up.
All right, so we'll move on. Next up is Brightspeed request for partnership on the NC grant, Great Grant broadband application. Oh, I'm sorry. I've moved on too quick. We have Adam Stanley here to hold us up just for 3 minutes.
Or less. Mr. Chairman, thank you, and fellow commissioners. Adam Stanley, Fire Marshal. With the growth that we're seeing, we have also had some fire insurance district issues that we need to address, and I respectfully ask that we have a public hearing next month to address some of the fire insurance district lines.
All right. We'll let the manager turn around so he can. So Mr. Stanley had asked about having a public hearing for moving some lines. Could you get to work on? Could you work on that for us? And I can't remember. I don't know how quick we can do it, but whatever that time frame is. So, okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Yeah. Anybody else before I jump the gun again? So we'll give anybody else a chance. Going once, going twice. All right. Now we'll have Brightspeed representative come up to talk about the NC Great Grant. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Steve Brewer. I am Director of Governmental Affairs for Lumen. You may very well know us as CenturyLink. I have received notice that I will transfer over to Brightspeed on or about August 1st, which is the expected date of the transaction close. I've got a presentation I'd like to share with you this evening. So I'd like to point you to the bullet points on the screen. Brightspeed, well, actually, Apollo Global Management agreed to purchase Lumen's local assets in 20 states, to include the state of North Carolina. Apollo Global Management has stood up a company that you will come to know as Brightspeed, and Brightspeed has publicly committed to investing an additional $20 billion to bring fiber-based broadband services across those states in the near future. So really looking forward to discussing that with you a bit more. Just as a number of questions that I have typically encountered in these types of meetings. Brightspeed is already publicly committed that they will participate in the federal government's ACP program. That stands for Affordable Connectivity Plan. That's a $30 credit offered by the federal government in order to reduce the cost of high-speed internet services to low-income households. We also have a plan build in the community. I mentioned a few minutes ago, Brightspeed is publicly committed to investing an additional $2 billion to bring fiber-based services across the states. In Johnston County, that number is going to approach 30,000 units. That's separate and apart from any of the broadband grants that we're going to discuss with you this evening. So Mr. Taylor was interested in us upgrading services where they already exist. Well, certainly that's part of that plan. So what we're here to talk about this evening, though, specifically is the GREAT grant. Locations for the GREAT grant are those locations that currently today have services that are less than 25 and 3 in speed. Previous GREAT grants started at 10.1, so the threshold has been raised, if you will, making more eligible areas. Ineligible areas are those that include RDOF funding. RDOF is a Rural Digital Opportunity Fund established by the federal government. It's paid out over a 10-year period, I believe, and providers have up to 6 years to bring service to those RDOF-defined areas. Those areas ineligible for this program. Tier 3 county non-rural tracts ineligible for this program.
Excuse me one second.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry to interrupt, but our county split between two different RDOF areas. Does that make any difference or have any impact?
Those RDOF areas, if you have RDOF areas in the county that have been awarded, they are ineligible for this GREAT grant program.
Okay.
They will get service, but through RDOF as opposed to the GREAT grant program. Other federal broadband grants, so the USDA has awarded some, NTIA has awarded some. If an area has received a broadband grant through another federal program, that program is ineligible. And previous GREAT grant award programs. We actually have a small GREAT grant award in Johnston County, a little over 500 homes. As a matter of fact, we'll start bringing customers online as part of that program here within the next month. And then the max funding per application is $4 million. And you can have multiple applications within the county. You can partner with multiple providers in the county, and potentially both of them can be funded. Each application, though, is capped at $4 million, and the total cap is $8 million per county as a part of this program. And then,
Mr. I did have a question. Go back up one bullet. It's unless there's some significant meaning to non-rural tract, we are a Tier 3 county. So how are we eligible for?
there will be certain tracts, certain census blocks within the county that are eligible in certain.
So I think that gets to what Commissioner Godwin was asking about.
Later this year, you will also hear of the CAB program. That stands for Completing Access to Broadband. That program will likely be stood up sometime around third quarter. And if there are areas that need to be considered after the GREAT grant, we'll be happy to work with you in conjunction with that program to see if we can get as close as possible to universal service in this county. And I've also been asked to address the timeline. So the application is due on April 4th. So we've just got a very short period of time before applications are due. That will be followed by a challenge period. So other providers get to examine each other's application, basically is what that means. And if there are areas that already have service, there's a challenge process to deal with that. There will be an award, and then we would finalize contracts both with the state and hopefully with the county if we are able to enter into a partnership. And then construction and reporting would begin. That construction period lasts, it's approximately a 2-year period per the statute. So I've got a couple of different proposals for you here. The first proposal, we're targeting approximately 8,300 units in the county. The total cost of that project is $11.32 million, which brings us to a cost per premise of just over, well, $1,365. The actual count we're currently at is 8,291 locations. and we will deploy 124.1 miles of fiber. We estimate that we can receive a grant from the state of North Carolina for $4 million. We're asking that the county partner with us with a $1 million contribution, and we as the provider would put forth $6.32 million towards the cost of that project. Now, in addition to what you see on the screen, what's not identified is those locations that we're interested in doing separate and apart from the grant program. And that's the planned build that Brightspeed is looking to do with its own investment dollars, completely own its own investment dollars. And that's going to be about 30,000 locations in the county.
So is the target the same as a business or home, I guess, is it residential?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
Another proposal, slightly larger application. The total cost of this particular project is almost $16.5 million. The cost per prim, or cost per location, is $1,616. The reason I bring that to you is that's a benchmark that most providers use in evaluating the economic feasibility of a project. And it's also an important aspect of the scoring as part of the GREAT grant process. The number of premises we think we can reach for this project is a little over 10,000. We would deploy almost 200 miles of fiber. We think, or we're convinced we could get a grant from the state equal to $4 million. And we would request the county participate with a $2 million contribution, and we as providers would contribute almost $10.5 million. I'm happy to take any questions.
I have one, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Typically, when you talk about getting bigger, you achieve some economies of scale. But I guess in this case, when you go bigger, more mileage, it gets to be more costly. I guess you're reaching those areas that are not economically feasible.
You're going
less
to more and
feasible.
more rural areas.
Right.
Overwhelmingly so, the cost of fiber deployment is the major driver of the cost in a project of this nature. Certainly, there's electronics that like that fiber, but overwhelmingly so, when you're deploying over 200 miles of fiber, the cost of the fiber deployment itself is the largest driver in the cost. I will note that the project, this is all fiber to the home. Customers will be able to subscribe to 1 gig speeds, and that's symmetrical, meaning it'll be 1 gig coming into your home, 1 gig going out of your home as soon as we turn it up, and then that speed is scalable, I am told, up to 8 gig. And that's ultimately up to 8 gig. Our Brightspeed COO, a gentleman named Tom McGuire, he played a significant role in building Verizon's Fios, which is their fiber network. So I've learned a great deal from him. But looking forward to bringing these high speeds to customers in Johnston County. Again, happy to answer any additional questions.
Let me ask you a question, and the first thing constituents is going to ask me is why should governments partner with private business as far as investment?
So, the real reason that we're heading in this direction is that in order to make these projects economical, in order to make them so that a private provider can afford to deliver these products, it requires that partnership. The state of North Carolina certainly recognized that by setting aside $350 million as part of this program, the GREAT Act, and then this fall you're going to see an additional $400 million set aside for the CAB program. So, also as the reason we're coming to you for partnership is really twofold. The state of North Carolina wanted to incentivize counties to use part of their ARPA fundings in order to expand broadband to an even greater extent, and they've done that by awarding you a point for partnership and additional 2 points if you use your ARPA funds to fulfill the obligations of that partnership. So it is to make these projects economic.
Thank you, sir.
And any other questions?
If we were agreed to the proposal, either one of them, how would we know it's going to get built? I guess I saw the construction period. It's got to be done in 2 years.
Yes, sir. The GREAT Act provides for a 2-year construction period of time. We will enter into a contract with, we have successfully won great grants in the past. We will enter into a contract with the state of North Carolina, and then we would also enter into a contract with the county. And, you know, payment for successful completion could be worked into the contract, and it could even entail the county does not expend any funds back to the provider until the work is concluded and proven.
I did a lot of construction financing, 40 years at the bank, and of course we go out and make inspections. How would we know? I mean, I'm not doubting. I'm just, how would we, the logistics of how do we know when it's done?
So the nice thing is you can largely rely on the state of North Carolina to provide you that feedback. They have a process for verifying. They actually go and physically identify areas where assets have been provisioned before they will reimburse the provider for their grant award. So the state of North Carolina will largely handle that process for you. We will have reporting obligations to the state of North Carolina that deal with, we'll have certain milestones we need to reach throughout that 2-year period of time. And certainly we'd be happy to communicate that to you as well.
And if people choose not to sign up, I mean, it's stubbed up to their property, but if they don't hook up, you don't have anything to do with that.
Yes, sir, that's
right.
enough.
Okay.
But I will comment to you that Brightspeed has committed to participating in the federal government's ACP program. That's a $30 discount per month, and then they're also investigating doing an additional discount on top of that in order to help low-income households. So, you know, we're hoping to get we're obviously hoping to get as many households and small businesses on the network as possible.
Good.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
as the commissioner for the largest district and probably less dense populated area, I have concerns because I realize we don't have the density in my district to make it really advantageous to put cable, but my area is going to be the largest affected. I'm already hearing our school system went virtual because of COVID, and a lot of the children were unable to participate virtually because there was no internet available for them. And it doesn't look like with this program it's going to really improve that situation in my district. So I have concerns, but I realize that you can't build everywhere, but we are using county tax dollars here, and my people pay taxes just like everybody else.
Absolutely. And to address your concern, the state grant is capped at $4 million per application. So, you know, I went to our team and asked them to build the largest application that they could put forward under the eligibility requirements of the program. And that's exactly what they did. However, later this year, the state is going to make available the the Completing Access to Broadband program. That program is funded with $400 million. Each county is going to have access to $4 million. I will commit to you today that we'll be happy to come back and sit down and discuss the areas that were not impacted by this grant program to see if there's anything we can do as part of the CAB program to bring the county as close to universal services as possible. That's what that program is intending to do later this year. And that program, it's $400 million, 100 counties in the state. Each county has access as part of that program. Now, it will require an additional contribution from the counties. I do know that. I don't know the funding associated or the exact funding model associated with that program. It has not been released yet. I suspect we're probably going to have that in the next 30 to 60 days. But this county will obviously have an opportunity to participate in that program with an additional $4 million from the state.
Mr. Chairman, we are the second largest county in the state of North Carolina. I see a lot of areas that do not show any of the blue. Am I to assume that there is no broadband in those areas?
No, sir, that's not accurate.
Okay.
This is just where the grant would go.
So this is only the money that's
Yes,
being,
sir.
okay.
As I noted earlier, we're going to upgrade facilities in a number of locations that are not eligible for this grant program, but we're going to upgrade those to fiber. If you've had an RDOF award in your county, those areas would not be eligible for this program either. It's just they will be funded through another program, but it will not be the GREAT Act.
If there's already regular cable, are you going to change it to fiber optic in those areas?
I'll have to let my counterpart from Charter speak to that. I can't answer that for him. However, that is precisely what we are doing with the traditional copper lines in a number of locations in the county. As part of the GREAT Act, though, right now as we sit today, if a location has service of 25 and 3, so that's 25 megabytes coming into your home, 3 going out, it is ineligible for this program. Who knows, the speed threshold could change in future rounds, but for the program that we're talking about today, that is the threshold that we're getting at, 25 and 3. Now, the fiber that we're going to deploy will provide speeds of a gig, and that's symmetrical, meaning it's technically 940 megabytes coming into your home, 940 going out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just want to comment, I did hear in the opening your commitment that your company has made to do additional, and I think you just mentioned that again to Commissioner Braswell. So I certainly hope that we see that also in upgrading along other areas.
I'm very excited about it. I've had to explain for a number of years why it was difficult and expensive to deploy broadband. In fact, as a matter, it is difficult and expensive to do. However, we're really at a crossroads in history with the federal funding made available for broadband infrastructure. So I'm tremendously excited about it and what this means for our future. I honestly hope in a few years we're not talking about lack of broadband as an issue.
Good. Any other questions? I did have one, maybe two, depending on how you answer the first one. So we'd mentioned our study that we had done earlier. So by being less than 25.3, I'm assuming that those areas that you're talking about in blue, I know this is the second option you have up there, but in both options meet where we identified the needs in our assessment.
So I have not looked at your particular assessment. What we did is we took the eligibility criteria as identified by the statute that stood up this grant program and built the largest application that we could build based upon the requirements of the GREAT Act.
But isn't that one of the criteria that you meet the areas that have been identified with needs as part of the GREAT grant?
The GREAT grant itself has qualifiers for what areas are eligible and what is not. One is the 25 and 3. An RDOF location is not eligible. There's a handful of other, and I went to our planners and asked them to build the largest grant possible under the restraints of the grant program.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Any others? Thank you, Mr. Brewer.
Thank you.
And I will mention that we have Mr. Jeff Brooks here, and I think since we got two back-to-back, we have Mr. Brooks here, maybe available to the board to ask questions, and then we also have Emily Meeker with Point and Sproul here, who advises us on all things ARPA. So if we have questions of those, we can hold them till after the second presentation to make sure we get specific answers. But next up is the same request, this time from Charter.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. Good to be back. My name is Joe Prater, and I'm with Charter Spectrum, and luckily Mr. Brewer already set the groundwork on the GREAT grant program. So I'll go ahead and jump on in. I did want to make one note about the RDOF protection under the program. The state did protect terrestrial RDOF broadband, which means it's a wireline or fixed wireless. Satellite RDOF is not protected. So that in Johnston County, that's SpaceX. So the satellite RDOF areas are eligible under the GREAT grant. So we can move to the next. So this is a map based on 477 data of the county. Now, under the GREAT grant program, NCDIT created what they call the NC1 map, which is an interactive map on their website that literally shows what's eligible and what's not in the eyes of the state. we extracted that data straight from their interactive map to identify the addresses that we want to go after under grade. So everything that they've already said, these are eligible, we picked it up in this right here. And that's, again, the way I describe where we're at now, most ISPs have already picked the low-hanging fruit, right? Some other programs have gone with some of those fruit that are higher up on the tree. The ones we're going after now have fallen off and are rotting on the ground. These are the very low-dense areas that are very expensive to get to. And so to look at this map here, the gray is already covered by charter. Dark pink is an area that is being claimed as providing somewhere between 25 and 100 that providers claiming it, so it's considered served in the eyes of the state. The blue there is Charter's RDOF that we have down in the southern part. We've talked about this with the county before, but it accounts for about a little over 2,044 estimated locations in those blue census blocks. So you can consider those blue areas in the southern part of the county and then up some of the northeastern area as well. Those are going to be built in the same time frame as this project, should we get awarded a great grant. So if you look at it holistically, between the 3,607 addresses that we've identified through what's eligible on the state's interactive map, plus our 2,044 locations with RDOF, it's really a project of about 5,651 total locations across the county that are without access to 25.3 that are going to get gig-capable fiber to the premise. Any questions about the map? I know it's a lot of colors, but this is an exact snapshot based on the FCC's data of what all providers claim to provide, shows where the need is. Again, directly extracted from the NC1 map that DIT put together that shows the areas that are eligible.
I'll ask my same question. So did you take a look at our study to see if this matches up to that?
I have not, no. Okay. But what our strategy is here is under great. Let's go after everything that the state already says is eligible, utilize the funding to do so, and then using that additional $4 million with CAB in the next round, because that gives the county a little more discretion on how you can use that money. Right now, the state says you got to use it for what's eligible based on our mapping. When you get the $4 million from the CAB, you kind of have your own discretion to use it, and that's when we would want to really work hand in hand with Mr. Brooks and the report to identify any additional areas that we were not able to capture based on the state's eligible criteria, and use that additional funding to fill in any other gaps that may be not be picked up by the state.
Okay. Commissioner Godwin, I saw you lean forward.
Yeah, I do have a question, and this might lead to a more finite area than you want to get in right now. And this is not from a personal forum, but I'm hoping this question is probably shared by a lot of citizens in the state, in the county. I live in the gray area just north of Selma, and there's no in-ground, there's nothing in the ground. I've got a satellite dish on top of my house, and I work from home. I've got an office at home, and some days I tell my wife, it's costing me a third more time than it ought to, just to do stuff in and out. And I don't know what the answer to that is, because, I'm in the gray area, but I don't have any service on my road. My road's 2 miles long. There's fiber at one end. I don't know what's at the other end, but I don't have it. And I don't see getting it through any of this program because we're in the gray area. We're in service.
Is that picked up in the county's analysis?
I'm not sure.
Is that something that we could utilize the CAB funding to go after? Because those are the exact gaps that we're trying to identify to use that additional funding.
Yeah.
Because right now it's not showing up.
Right.
Because the provider's claiming it. It could be us, it could be another provider.
Yeah, my zip code, my zip code shows we got service.
Right.
But it's not service on Hawkins Road.
Oh, yeah. There are certainly inadequacies in the data, both at the federal, state level. We recognize that. And again, our mission with this first round of funding is to use what the state sees as eligible, and then a few months down the road, the additional CAB funding that comes down, we want to be as aggressive as we possibly can based on the discretion that the county will have with that particular funding.
And I think from Commissioner Godwin, from the nod in the back, Mr. Brooks nodded his head that that was in the area in our study, but maybe that's a question we can ask for him to kind of look at these and give us his opinion on if there's any areas missing. But any other questions?
I just want to know we're here for the long haul. I mean, there's 2 rounds here, right? There's great, which is what the state deems as eligible, and then there's CAB, which is what gives the county the ability to identify what's eligible. But we're in it to win it through the end.
All right.
I have one more question, Mr. Chairman. What about our participation? How important is it? I realize every dollar furnished might help get connectivity to more people. But what are the companies bidding for this grant, whether we participate or not? Are you going to go forward with it? Are you going to still build it to whatever extent you can?
Yes, sir. We will plan to apply, regardless if we get the county support. Well, like I said, we pass over 85,000 locations in the county. We're here, we're invested, and we want to increase our network to reach as many people as we can. So we will apply regardless.
Right.
We hope we can partner together to bolster that application to have a more advantageous score where it's more enticing for the state to grant funding to do so.
And passes is addresses.
Yes, sir.
Right.
That's correct. I mean, if we pass a home, that it's regardless of whether they take our service or not, we're passing it.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Are you going over any other providers, where other providers are located with your proposal here?
If there is a provider there, they're providing inadequate service because the light pink areas are the areas we're going after, and light pink means that there may be service there, but it's not up to par. It's not 25.3 or better. And there are instances where we may have to build through where there's an adequate provider to get to those other unserved areas. So, I mean,
Yes, sir. I
it's a case by case, right? Yes, sir.
understand that.
But we're here to be as flexible and as creative as the county wants us to be to reach as many people as possible.
Right. Mr. Pryor, I believe you have more than.
I do, yeah,
that.
sorry. The next one was just has the maps, or has roads, because I just know that when you see the colored map, it's kind of hard to tell where places are, but when you throw in, 95 and 70, it gives you a little better bearings of where these areas are. And I hope, Mr. Braswell, that we're capturing what you're looking for. But if not, it could be a cab opportunity as well. And just for the record, those red areas there are the SpaceX RDOF areas. You'll notice that there is an area of SpaceX in the northeast corner that we have picked up to try to go after based on proximity to our current network. So there are some satellite areas that we're going to plan to go after under the grate as well. I did want to be talk about what our options are, because we have a low income option, which we call our Spectrum Internet Assist. We too are participants in the federal's ACP program, which allows for a $30 subsidy per household for those that qualify for free or reduced lunch, or individuals on SSI. If they're eligible for those federal programs, they're eligible for the funding, which essentially gives them free service. I don't foresee that federal funding going anywhere anytime soon, so I think that will be available. But again, just wanted to be upfront about the services that we provide. It goes up to a gig. And again, you'll see at the bottom, we always have our promotional $44.99 for new customers that sign up for the 200 meg package. But the point of this, though, was also to show that we do have the low income option. And we would look to the county, should we get awarded and should we get into these areas, we would look to the county to partner to amplify the message that's available. We would like to go through any type of media channels the county would use to make sure we get the word out, because if we build to these areas and people think they can't afford it when there's a program that will help, we want to make sure they know. And then this is just talking about the actual network we're building, which is fiber to the premise. It's our EPON, which is Ethernet Passive Optical Network. It leverages our current network. And I know there was a question earlier about, well, what about the existing network? We plan to upgrade our existing network as well with our own private investment. We're looking to utilize the state funding to go after these areas that are unserved. Thank you. And that's it. I'll take any questions.
Any other questions for Mr. Prater?
Thank you for letting us interrupt you.
No, sir.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right. Any questions of Ms. Meeker or Mr. Brooks or any other of our staff?
I'd like to hear from Jeff a few moments to make sure that,
Mr. Brooks, come on down.
and then our other attorney to make sure that we're going to be okay by using ARCA funds, okay?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Jeff
Good evening.
Brooks. I like Holt's Lake barbecue. I don't know what else I need to tell you.
You've seen the presentations of
Yes,
both
sir.
plans.
Yes, sir.
And you have your study and your, that may fall in other areas as that moves along as you were watching the presentation, does it seem feasible to you?
It seems feasible, yes, sir. The first point I would make is, in several meetings where we've discussed this, we've talked about how the math would work, that each of these providers, and we've had, as ECC, we've had discussions with both the providers, and we also see this replicated in other states in which we're doing work where there are different providers. Most companies, because they understand where broadband is today, have already been calculating and actually calculating the cost and actually designing these projects. So they have an idea of what the project was going to look like. The math worked to be that we know what it's going to cost. We have an idea of what a grant program in a particular state or locale may return to us, and then we have an idea of where we're going to ask for help. So when I'm looking and I think about the cost of projects, because we've built a number of projects in North Carolina, so we have an idea, obviously, what the materials cost, path of permitting, easements, then the engineering, those costs. And at the end of the day, I'm looking to see, for the amount of investment that they're asking for the county to make, based on the return of what's coming back to the county or what's coming back to its residents, both these proposals seem to be reasonable. It's important to understand, and I think Joe made this point, that many times, and we even discussed this, sometimes these providers have to take networks through areas that are already served, so they're not getting any repayment or any grant support for those areas in order to deliver these services in these unserved areas. So that's a part of the calculation that goes into this. It also applies to where somebody's going to apply to provide service, because if the areas in which I want to deliver service are too far removed from where I have existing infrastructure, it may just not be feasible, not just from a cost of construction, but also from an operational perspective. I may have to send a service technician or a fiber repair crew too far away from my core operations in order for that to be efficient in terms of restoring the service and those sorts of things. I was heartened to hear that both companies are participating in the ACP, because I think that's important that we're able to extend service to low-income houses. I think part of the advantage that we've discussed is the opportunity to make sure that if we have virtual education, we have different job opportunities, that these are accessible to our residents here in Johnston County. So to know that there's a way to have this paid for and supported, I think that's an important thing. One point that I want to make that I don't think they brought out is whenever you put these types of applications together, and I know from our team having done this for other clients, other counties and electric co-ops, that the state does have a very strict grading algorithm. So you can put together a wonderful application to get the maximum amount of money that would be allowed, but you may not win the grant because you didn't grade high enough. So sometimes you take things out of that grant application to come up under certain cost thresholds so you have the opportunity to win the grant. And I think Steve may have alluded to it. I'm not sure if Joe did or not. But, for example, the state has a threshold where it says if you're below a certain amount per household passed, then you're going to score more points in that criteria, just as you score more points if the county contributes ARPA funds in terms of this funding. So a quick example, not to bore you, but when the first round of great grants came out, the maximum was $2 million. And our client said, great, we'll get $2 million for our project. But by the time you work the numbers so that you can maximize the grant application to win the money, they didn't get $2 million. They got $556,000. But that was $556,000 than they had previously, so they were able to move the project along. And I think both Steve and Joe alluded to the fact that the state requires reporting milestones. We actually talked about a situation in another county where the great grant recipient did nothing for 2 years. I think the state learned their lesson on that. They will be very diligent on this. And if they're not diligent enough, you can certainly contract with another firm to look over their shoulder and say, hey, we want to assess your progress.
Very good analysis.
Welcome. Any more questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Godwin.
as I understand it, these two companies are vying for the grant from
Yes,
the
sir.
state.
Yes, sir.
If we choose to participate, whether it be 0 or 500,000 or a million or more, it would go to whoever gets that grant. Is that right?
You can support, and they can correct me, but you can support both grant applicants and you're not committing any funding. It's not until the state awards the grant to the provider that they're going to come back to you and say, hey, we want to negotiate the final contract. Now, it could be in these negotiations, I can't speak for either company, it could be in these negotiations that they may suggest to you that if you alter the previously suggested amount of contribution, they may alter the project. So just be aware of that when you're having these discussions with them.
It's good for the gander, it's good for the goose.
Fair enough.
All right.
Any other questions for Mr. Brooks? So I did have one, just to make sure. So in both the areas they're talking about, both groups are talking about serving, are those both areas you found in your evaluation that needed areas? Are there, and I guess that's the first part of the question, so I'll stop there.
Especially in the southern part of the county, absolutely. Now, you have noticed in one of the maps, I believe it's Spectrum's map, that you saw the little pinpricks here and there. And that's a challenge that I always make to every service provider that's presenting to counties that we work with, because it's, I'm not going to say it's easier, that's unfair, but it's easier to build network next to an area where you're already serving. The challenge is to come out, and if you look at your county like Swiss cheese, there's a hole here, there's a hole here, just like in your scenario. Now, some of these grant programs may address that. There's the $92 million program that the state will roll out at the end of the year, where if you have a certain amount of network going down a road, this program may allow for another mile or two of network to be constructed. However, when you add all this up, we're still coming back to that concept of what is reasonable universal service. That number's probably 99 point something %. If someone is down a 6,000-foot dirt road, winding through trees with various easement issues, they may not get fiber service because it just isn't practical.
Right.
So, and I guess my less technical question is, based on the criteria of the grants, when you looked at either one of the two maps, was there any areas on the map that weren't going to be served that you said, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're not in the grant application?
I think for the first round of the GREAT grant, their applications and the maps that they have displayed are appropriate. There's still going to be unserved areas, and ideally, that's going to be picked up in the CAB program. There are also going to be additional federal grants coming, and as the criteria for, I hate to use the word speed, but that's what most people understand, change from this 25 megabits to 100 megabits, and this criteria is changing. Additional funding is going to be available at a federal level and at a state level. So we're going to get those holes filled in. And I will make a point. Mr. Taylor brought up some great points that he gets referenced constantly, I think, in these presentations. But somebody's going to get this money. We should get it here as opposed to somebody else getting it. So if there's opportunity for us to leverage money, I want us to have it in this county as opposed to another county or even another state having access to that money, all other things being equal. I appreciate and have been in a number of these meetings where I've heard discussions around wastewater and water and storm sewer and libraries and landfills, and I've even said those things out loud. Those are vitally important. I don't know that broadband is any more important than those components, but I don't know if it's any less, and if funds are available that expand what the county's committed to, I think that's a reasonable thing.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just one question.
Yes, sir.
In the statement that you just made, and is it fair to say that this is a good step toward getting the broadband throughout the county, which is our ultimate goal, is we'd like to provide it countywide. But based on this would be a stepping stone, and then the CAB program later, that this could get the ball rolling to start moving in that direction. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir, that's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you.
One more question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Brooks. CAB, would that be underserved and no service? Do they lump them together with the CAB?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay.
And the other thing that probably will happen between now and the time the CAB program goes out, more states are investing additional money in mapping, and I think both gentlemen made this point when they presented, and it's even called out in our report, and we've discussed it. The FCC maps are wrong, and it's an important point to make for you, Mr. Godwin, because heretofore, if one address within a census block was considered as served, that entire census block was marked off as served. States are the federal government has been trying to move toward this, but several states, Montana and Georgia, for example, have moved very aggressively. to where they're not identifying census blocks, they're actually identifying addresses. So they're identifying whether or not an address has service. And that is going to begin to come into play with what the North Carolina Bio Group is doing as we move into the fall. We look at some changes that may be coming to the cab. So your address and your neighbors on that road, doesn't matter that you're in a census block that the FCC says is served, you'll be then classified as being unserved, underserved.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And I would like to say that Mr. Taylor is a unpaid consultant for us on broadband and many other things. So thank you, Mr. Taylor. And Ms. Meeker, would you come forward at this point?
My name is taking advantage. Why are we not burying orange pipe with all the black pipe around this county? There's got to be hundreds of miles of water pipe we're putting in. And we're digging a trench already.
So I think that's a separate issue, Mr. Taylor, and point well taken.
Commissioners, I'll just make a quick point. Fiber is rarely buried with water, rarely buried with sewer,
Okay.
just so you know. Generally, those are split.
All right, well, we've learned something tonight, so yes, thank you. Ms. Meeker, and while you're coming forward, Mr. Hester, could you remind us about the amount of ARPA funding that we received?
Yes, sir. Johnston County received $40 million. And, you know, the board's had some discussions about the use of those funds. And it was, majority of that was, the intent was for water and wastewater, but also you did mention broadband.
All right, Ms. Meeker, I think we have some questions for you to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do with our ARPA money. So, Commissioner
No, I want to
Bradwell.
make sure that we approve this and that we use ARPA funding, and then they don't come back and say, hey, you couldn't do that. Is that a possibility or not?
So Commissioner Braswell, there are three sort of requirements under the federal regulations for this money. This is state and local fiscal recovery funds. And there were recently, a federal rule was issued, a final rule. You must have an identified need. That is something that the county determines. Here, the state's grant focuses on increasing speeds, and that's what you heard from both presenters. And so you would meet that here. The second requirement is that the speeds are the 100 megabytes per second symmetrical. Both of these presenters talked about 1 gigabyte, so that would meet that requirement. And the third requirement is affordability, and that is that the providers participate in the ACP program, with both of these providers said that they would do. So looking at those requirements, the presentations do meet the federal regulations.
That's all I wanted to hear.
Any other questions for Ms. Meeker?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, gentlemen, you've heard both of the requests for partnership. Any discussion or any motion to approve funding?
Mr. Chairman, I got a motion. I move we approve the grant matching funding an amount not to exceed $1 million from county ARPA funds for the North Carolina Great Grand Broadband application for the provider that is successfully approved by the state of North Carolina for Johnston County.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
In the 40s and 50s, there was a great massive movement in this country to provide electricity to those areas that economies of scale just didn't provide. The companies couldn't do it profitably. And I think we're moving probably faster than we're all willing to admit to the same situation with connectivity. I think it's going to get to be as important as electricity. So I support this, and I think we ought to do it.
All right. Any other discussion?
And in that motion, I hope it's sufficient enough for both companies to move forward.
Yep.
Okay. All right. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Pater and Mr. Brewer. And Ms. Meeker.
We
Mr.
learned
Brooks.
something tonight.
Yeah. While they're clearing the room, the next item on the agenda is an update to the board from the Triangle Land Conservancy and Adrian O'Neill, our Parks, Open Space, and Greenway director, coordinator, and all other things, is here to start the discussion for us.
I just wanted to come in front of you gentlemen again. You know, from time to time, we bring our partners in.
Hold on one second.
Okay.
Gentlemen, if y'all could take your conversation out in the hall, it would be appreciated. We can't hear. Yeah, as my wife tells me often, I can't hear anyway, so background noise makes it even that much worse, so thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity to bring before you Triangle Land Conservancy and Leanne Hammerbacher. As you know, from time to time, we bring our partners in so they can tell you what they're doing and tell you things that are coming up on the horizon, and that's what Leanne is going to do tonight. So without further ado, I'll let her come up and tell you what's going on.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us this evening. We wanted to come and give a quick update of some of our work to date this year, as well as some of our upcoming needs. It's interesting to follow the broadband folks, because I think if there's two things during the pandemic that citizens of Johnston County really craved, and the region as a whole, it was both places to recreate outside and broadband.
Yep.
At least I know I did.
Well, I stand a much better chance of understanding what you're about to tell us than what I just heard, so.
So I'm with Triangle Land Conservancy. All of the pictures in my presentation are from Johnston County. Johnston County has some amazing natural spaces, amazing farms, and we're working to try to protect them. So we cover 6 county regions shown here. Again, our mission is to protect open space. We protect it for 4 key public benefits. That includes clean water, local farms, wildlife habitat, and places for people to connect with nature. Since 1983, we've helped protect over 22,000 acres of land in the Triangle, and we own about 8,000 acres, including 8 nature preserves that are open to the public across our region. Zooming in a little more closely on Johnston County, we have helped protect over 5,000 acres to date in Johnston County alone. As part of this acreage, we run 2 public nature preserves that have over 16 miles of walking trails and receive over 20,000 visitors a year. We focus our efforts across the county, but have 2 key priority areas. That includes Marks Creek on the Wake-Johnson County line, as well as the low ground south of Smithfield. But then we also focus our works on the river corridors and working lands across the county. We have a real effort to try to support the efforts of the Mountains to Sea Trail and also create a larger wildlife habitat along the Neuse that would connect both our Williamson Preserve and then the low grounds area. Which goes to the next. So there's 2 nature preserves. The first one is Flower Hill up on Moccasin Creek. This is an amazing natural feature and place, one of the most unique places in the state of North Carolina. It's one of the only places I know of where you can see Catawba rhododendron, which is the flower shown here, and longleaf pine together in the same spot. It's amazing, the end of April, beginning of May, we lead hikes every year, and this year participating with the Friends of Johnston County Parks and the countywide cleanup, and I'd be happy to give any of you a tour if you want to come out the last week of April.
One of my ancestors used to own that property
Awesome.
a long time ago.
Well, I'm glad they took care of it.
Yeah.
Next one. Our other main preserve is the Bailey and Sarah Williamson Preserve, which is on the Wake-Johnson County line. Together with the Riverwalk Tract, this is about 750 acres. We have over 15 miles of trail on the ground that are open to the public. Johnston County helped support both the acquisition of this property as well as the construction of that purple trail down there, which is our Magnolia Run Trail. It can be accessed from the Neuse River Greenway as well as the top of the preserve. The unique thing about this preserve is not only do we have hiking trails, but it's also the center for what we call our Next Gen Farming program. And so we're supporting new and beginning farmers across the preserve on farmland. Currently, we have 5 farm partnerships, and farmers are raising everything from livestock to local flowers that are sold in Archer's Lodge and at local markets. I came to you a little over a year ago and let the commissioners know about one of our largest acquisitions in history, and that was the 1,120 acres known as the Broadband Bottomlands, which is on the Neuse River. I'm excited tonight. I'm not actually coming to ask you for money for this tract. I have some other asks I'll get to in a little bit, but we were able to work with state and local partners and able to secure the funding to pay off our loan and are working for future plans and opportunities for this preserve for the citizens of Johnston County. In the meantime, we've been, again, working on those Neuse River connections, really important with the growth in Johnston County to try to conserve the corridor, particularly between Clayton and Smithfield, for that future trail. This past year, we closed on 5 easements protecting over a mile of the future trail corridor, as well as a historic canal and 50 acres along the river. In addition to that, we really had an amazing year on the Little River. As part of the 540 settlement with the expansion in Wake County, there were mitigation requirements for the Neuse River Basin, and Triangle Land Conservancy really worked to push the Department of Transportation to mitigate those in the Neuse Basin, and specifically in Johnston County, because the Little River is home to 5 endangered species, in addition to a lot of other rare aquatic habitats. So this past year, we had our, you can go to the next one, largest closings of easements in history. We closed on 57 separate tracts, protecting 300-foot stream buffers along the Little River and over 622 acres. You can see those in purple here. We have a real goal to try to connect these. They are separated a little bit, so are working actually now on some state and federal applications to try to get some resources to connect these totally, as well as upriver on Buffalo Creek. You see this green blob in here. That's a conglomeration of about 1,500 acres worth of working lands easements, and we're hoping in the long run we could connect all these areas together. So what's next? Well, we really would like to continue that work, again, along the Little River and Buffalo Creek. We have an amazing opportunity to really support contiguous habitat as well as working lands and farms. Also think there's the potential for some kind of blueway or paddle trail there in the future. That could be a great recreational resource for the county. In addition, we're working to continue to try to leverage state, federal, and private funds. This year, our state trust funds, both our Agricultural Development and Preservation Trust Fund, as well as our Land and Water, which used to be known as the Clean Water Management Trust Fund, had record numbers. They went from about $14 million a year up to $60 million, kind of as they were saying with the broadband. We really want to see this money come to Johnston County. We're at a unique opportunity where there is funding to be leveraged, and there's willing landowners. That's one thing about TLC. We only work with landowners who want to see their land conserved, and you know, we have a lot of priorities and a lot of interest, just not the funding to make all those happen. In addition, working on that MST corridor, as well as really trying to develop a conservation strategy for the county that could really prioritize both working and wildlands. So immediate needs, well, I had planned on asking you for $625,000 for Broadband, but as I mentioned, we were able to fill that hole. But we do have a need for 6 other projects that could really use that matching funding. Again, a lot of the state and the federal funds give additional points if there's a local match. Even a small amount can make all the difference in competing with other projects across the state. We have 6 projects that are in the pipeline for 2022 that could close and protect an additional 636 acres. These projects in a total are valued at $4.4 million. So we could leverage for less than $1,000 an acre from the county over $4 million worth of land value and funds and help secure some of those critical corridors. We have a real need. There are some incredibly generous citizens of Johnston County who are very interested in either donating land or easements, but any time you donate, that comes at a cost. There's transaction costs, whether that's, you know, survey, stewardship, or legal, and tend to run anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 per project. It's real hard when a landowner is saying, "I'll donate this to you," to come back and then say, "Yes, but we need, you know, X amount of cash to make this project happen." So if there's a way we could work with the county to help fund some of those costs or set aside a fund, really can make a difference in seizing those opportunities when they arise. In addition, we're hoping next year, again, that these state trust funds, as well as some of the federal programs, will be at a much higher level. So if we had a local match for projects, again, it would make us much more competitive and help us put in the strongest applications possible that are generally fall around the winter time. So these pictures on the right, those are 2 projects we have in that pipeline. I'd be happy to provide you more details on each of those projects, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in Johnston County, and we're at a point where we can go ahead and permanently conserve some of these properties and really create a legacy for the county in the future.
Is that information you would share with Mr. O'Neill to get on to? Okay, thank you.
Happy to
Time for
take any
questions.
questions at this point.
Where's the 1,120 acres in Broadband bottomlands?
It's right off of Grabtown Road,
Limestone land.
right across from where Ava Gardner was born, I hear,
Oh, yeah.
at the end of Avenue Road.
I've been involved with the agricultural conservation, that's not what I'm trying to say, the farm conservation easements.
Yes.
I take it that you guys don't compete with them, but complement their work. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about through the Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, we actually, the Department of Agriculture has to, they don't hold easements themselves, so they have to use an entity like TLC or the Soil and Water District to, hold those easements, monitor those easements. So one of those 6 projects actually has a funding application into the state, and it's a working farm that would use the Agricultural Development Trust Fund money.
Any other questions, comments?
I got
From time to time, we have needs to encroach upon some of these lands with county projects. How hard, once this goes into this conservancy, is it, I mean, is it like the railroad where you got to go through a lot of people to get a permit, or is that fairly simple? Is there 2 levels of people we see and then we've got it, or do we have to spend, I mean, years sometime like we do with the railroad to get an easement to go across property like that?
Yeah, I think it kind of depends on where the easement is going. This year already, I think we granted a utility easement to y'all on one of our conservation easements along Buffalo Creek alongside the road. So it is possible, of course, it's reviewed with the terms of easements and the impacts to the conservation values on the property.
I have I guess you'd say a tempered enthusiasm for this type of thing. I've been heavily involved with a lot of DOT projects in the last 8 years, and I've seen some of those projects, I dare say, probably increase the cost by 30% because of the Southern Environmental Law Center, just through time delays and that sort of thing. And quite frankly, most of our citizens don't really care about that little snail darter or whatever. And I understand the importance of it. I'm an outdoorsman, but I think there's some middle ground somewhere there. So I would support what you guys do, but again, it's tempered enthusiasm.
Yeah, I understand there's always give and takes with growth.
Right.
We really try to prioritize, plan out, look at the county goals, but then also look at some of the environmental and agricultural goals as well.
Anything? Anybody else? I'll just, Sam Barker, I will just say, one of the things in our land use plan is we're working on updating that. One of the things that a high percentage of our folks who responded to the survey talked about preservation of natural areas and open space. So I appreciate the work that TLC does and you do in particular to help us do that in Johnston County. And it's always nice when we can, leverage our dollars, as Commissioner Smith would say, we can provide the tip to the meal and not have to pay for the meal, but we do appreciate the work that you do and TLC does in helping Johnston County preserve that open space and natural areas. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next up on the agenda is a presentation of the fire study. I think we have Emergency Services Director Kevin Hubbard and Cleveland Fire Chief Chris Ellington here to present that. I think there they come. Mr. Hubbard is stepping forward.
And Mr. Dixon.
Good
Oh,
evening.
yeah, Mr. Dixon, who else? Well, we have a whole crew there. I'll let Kevin introduce,
We
I'll
brought
let
some
Kevin
backup.
introduce all of them, yeah.
Brought a little backup with us.
Mr. Evans.
Y'all brought enough?
Introduce the chiefs
Small
back
room,
there.
so-
Yeah, please introduce all the
Yes, sir,
chiefs,
be
yeah.
glad to. We've got Chris Elton, Chief of Cleveland Fire Department, here with us. We've got Chief Johnny Dixon, Micro Fire Department. We've got Chief Mike Brown, Smithfield Fire Department, Chief Alan Johnston, Benson Fire Department, and Alan Jenkins, can't remember your title, but JCC. He works with the fire training program at JCC.
Yeah,
And we got
No.
Josh Allman and Adam Stanley with us.
There we go. All right.
Help me represent staff, so.
Welcome.
We're outnumbered, gentlemen.
Brought plenty of backup with us.
And Adam Stanley
have
is
no way out, one
is
way
the
out.
chief also, right?
Yes, he is, Chief of Princeton Fire Department. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely, thank you, yes, sir, yes, sir.
Appreciate what y'all do. Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all for the opportunity to be here this evening. We'll keep it brief as you want to keep it. We just want to take this opportunity to let you know that staff has received the fire study. We have received it, reviewed it, gone through 2 drafts, and we have accepted the fire study now in the final form. We're happy to have that in hand. It was completed by Dr. Kramer of Kramer and Associates Fire Service Consultants out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'd like to take the opportunity now to thank a few folks before I turn it over to Chief Elton to provide a few more updates. I'd like to thank this board. Thank you for the opportunity and the vision to allow us to do this, and for the continued support you give to Johnston County Emergency Services, and specifically in this meeting, the fire service. We appreciate that a lot. I'd like to thank the county manager, Mr. Rick Hester, for his guidance and support during this process as well. Dr. William Kramer of Kramer and Associates and his team for their diligence and work on the study. We appreciate working with those guys. I'd like to thank our county fire chiefs for their input and support during this process. It's taken us a while, but they've done a great job providing input and continually supporting Adam and his team during the process. So we'd like to thank those as well. And last but not least, I'd like to thank our County Fire Marshal Adam Stanley for his work and dedication to the study and keeping it moving forward and making sure we had all the information we needed to get it done. So thank all those folks. We hope this study will be useful as we work together to navigate through the evolving challenges that our county fire service is facing, has been facing and is facing now as we go through the growth of the county. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Chris Elton of Cleveland Fire Department for additional comments and updates.
Chief Ellington, welcome.
Thank you, sir. Board, I just want to address you and just thank you for allowing this study to happen. It's been a long time coming. I think Commissioner Brazel and Commissioner Harris will remember sometime back in 2011, the fire chiefs group tried this on their own and got together, and the climate was a lot different, both at the county level and at the fire chief level, and it just didn't seem like the right time. In 2020, October of 2020, we got together and started discussing this fire study and what we wanted to see brought to light and how we wanted to help shape the future of Johnston County and the fire service. Through multiple emails, meetings, everything, we have kept one thing is what we wanted to keep the whole time, and that was transparency. We shared minutes of meetings, emails with consultants and what have you, to the whole time, just to make sure everybody was on the same page, and we could get the buy-in from all 24 fire chiefs. In December, we sent out a survey, and I'm proud to say that we received back 24 responses from that survey about the needs of their departments, individual departments. And in May, we selected a consultant and started the study underway. And here we are today. I think everybody got a copy of the study. I think it's 580-some pages of information. And there's a lot of information in there, and a lot of good information that'll help shape the future of Johnston County. I was asked, where do we go from here? I felt like the study was just step number one. Step number two, we want to make sure that everybody gets a copy of the study, fire chiefs, commissioners, and go through that study with a fine-tooth comb and determine where we need to focus. Our step two is to get a survey back to the fire chiefs after they have time to read this study, and let them prioritize some of the issues that they're having in their departments, in their communities. And when we get that data back together and collect that, we'd like to sit down with the chairman and our fire commissioner and kind of come up with a plan on where we go from here. What are we going to do to help the citizens of Johnston County in the future? Not this year, but 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road. You know, is there another study needed? I'm positive we'll be looking at that as well. So, you know, we want to be transparent through the whole thing. And like I said, we've received tremendous support from the fire chiefs throughout the county and the county staff. You know, they've been instrumental in helping us get on the right path with this, and we greatly appreciate it. I know you briefly had the study, but if there's any questions that you have, or any questions about the way we handle things, you know, we'd be glad to answer those if you have one.
Any questions for Chief Ellington?
I sat down to read and I got well into it and I fell asleep, and then I read some more and then I fell asleep, and I read some more and I fell asleep. I'm not going to tell you I've gotten through the whole thing, but there's a lot of information in there, and it looks like they've done a very thorough job. I'd be interested to hear when you get an opportunity to have the chiefs come together and discuss the priorities, because I know one of the things that I've always said is it's never a one-size-fits-all. You know, what works in the town of Clayton may not necessarily be the best thing for what happens in Bentonville or the folks down at Strickland's Crossroads and so forth. It's just different. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just different. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of what you come back with. But I think it's great that y'all have taken the initiative to move forward and study this and have a clear roadmap moving forward, because we are the fastest growing county in the state, and with that comes challenges to provide service to the people. And volunteerism is a difficult thing nationwide. That's not something that's just limited to here. It's difficult to find volunteers, and so I think we all have to work together cooperatively and come up with a plan, craft a plan to get us into the future. But I will say that the fire service that's received in this county in emergency response is second to none. I firmly believe that, and it's done through a lot of different combinations of different things, but I'll tell you, the people are really served well, and I've had the opportunity to go some other places and do some consulting after my retirement, and it doesn't work that well everywhere. I'll just tell you that. And we are so blessed and so fortunate to have the people on the job doing the job that they're doing and answering those calls 7 days a week, 365. It's phenomenal. So thank you for what you're doing, and I look forward to hearing the recommendations back from your group.
Thank you, sir. And just a little bit more on that, we are probably one of the most diverse counties.
Yes.
That is in the state. Yeah. When you look at the fire service, yeah, from the town of Clayton down to Broadband towards Bentonville, but there's a few needs that are the same amongst all of us, and that's what we want to focus on first. And I think you'll see that when we get our survey back from our fire chief. That's the direction we want to travel and help the good of the group.
Awesome. All right. Commissioner Braswell to my right.
We got two of us up here now, isn't that something?
We're surrounded.
Yeah. Chief, first of all, I want to thank you for heading this up, and you and the other members, the chiefs that were on board, so willingly and dedicated, spent an awful lot of time with this project. Numerous emails, numerous meetings, but my greatest takeaway from this is the final product is a little bit smaller book than the original book that I received. It took both Kevin and Adam to bring it to me. It was it was so big, and you wanted something to read, Commissioner. But it's condensed down. I'm not going to say I've read everything of it. I sort of flip to the back page first, and then I go forward. But I'm looking forward to the next steps of getting it done. And you're right. I remember the first one we had, and we met at Cleveland a lot in 2011. But now I think we're ready to face some tough answers and some tough questions, and again continue to provide great fire service to the citizens of Johnston County from all 24 of them. They're great departments.
Well, thank you, sir.
All right, Commissioner Braswell to my left now.
Chris, thank you for your service that you've done to the county, particularly for the work you've done on preparing this fire study. I just want to say that we have a great county here with 24 fire districts that are dedicated men. I've visited them all, and they are really, I mean, it's amazing to me. But last night at about 1:30, I have the distinct honor of living close enough I can hear the fire whistle at Princeton. And the fire whistle went off 3 times, 3 consecutives, and just a few minutes you heard the fire trucks pull out. 15 minutes later, the same thing happened. And I just wondered, I said, these people had to get up from their beds, their warm beds, and go out and perform a service, and probably a lot of them are doing it for free. So my hat's off to all the firemen in Johnston County. Y'all do a wonderful job, and I personally appreciate it.
Let me chime in on that, Commissioner Braswell. I'm going to read an excerpt right fast from the executive summary. Regarding fire suppression activities, the report shows that the Johnston County Fire Department network can usually meet national standards for volunteer response, even though individual fire companies are deficient in staffing. I think that's a tribute to the individual capabilities and dedication.
And I will say every department continues to do a lot with a little. And they're stretched very thin, but they're still putting out a quality product. So.
I was really amazed the fact that y'all have these young firefighters you are training now, and the involvement they have and the attitude they've got. I mean, it's wonderful.
It is. Junior firefighter programs are very important. They're very important to the volunteer service because that is our future. We're investing in our children and investing in our future, the fire service in a whole.
Absolutely.
And our academy that's going on over there at JCC, we appreciate what they're doing over there to further advance the skills of those who want to follow you folks' footsteps.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I have just a point of personal.
Yes.
I do want to welcome Fire Chief Mike Brown back. He's sitting there patiently back in the corner. He is the Smithfield Fire Chief now. I screwed it up so bad that they had to bring in somebody from Wilson to fix it all for me. But no,
Only
Mike.
one?
No, Mike, we're just happy to have you here. I think this is probably the first county commissioners meeting you've been to. I just want to welcome you. You're among a great group of people. Chief Dixon, Chief Ellington, all these people, they're as fine a group as people as you'll ever want to meet, and I know they'll do anything in the world to help you, and so will we, and so will I. You carry on the tradition. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
All right, anyone else? If not, I'll say, Chief Ellington, again, thank you. Thank all those who participated, all the chiefs, our emergency services staff. One thing we talked about last week at our strategic planning session was change, and I'm talking about proactive change, and that is good. It affects all of us in this county as we're the fastest growing county in the state by percent. But I think that's one thing that we see, that the fire chiefs and our emergency services are willing to be proactive in that change, and the fact that we're not waiting for something to happen and we just say, oh, well, we couldn't do anything. So I thank you for that, being proactive and looking at the changes to better the lives and the situations of our folks in Johnston County. So I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next up is manager reports and comments. Mr. Hester.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I just have one thing. In Johnston County, if there's a new position to be created, it has to be approved by the Board of Commissioners. And I would just respectfully request the board to approve a new position in administration, executive assistant position that would help assist the clerk to the board, county attorney, and myself.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the position that Mr. Hester has requested.
I second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
All right. All right, next item is board reports and comments. I'll start with Commissioner Braswell to my left and work our way this way.
I just want to reiterate that we've got to stay on top of the fact that we have one river that we can utilize in our county for water supply and for waste distribution. We better be looking for something else with the growth we've got.
I think I've said enough tonight.
All right.
Just one thing, I had the unfortunate or fortunate opportunity to have had a couple of health issues, and I first want to say thanks to everyone who checked in on me. But the main reason I bring this up is to speak about the Clayton Hospital in Johnston County. Those folks are absolutely fantastic, and I just want to make that publicly known that is a really first-class operation. The caring, the physicians, the nurses, the CNAs, I mean, it's top to bottom, they take pride in what they're doing, and they really, really do a fantastic job. And so, fortunately, I had never had the opportunity to use a hospital here, and I hope I never have to go again, but I will say that they really, really shine among their professionalism. It's really, really a good facility, and we're blessed to have them here in the county. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Braswell?
No, I'd like to, first of all, say to you, Mr. Chairman, congratulations for a great session we had down in Campbell. It showed you put in a lot of hard work and a lot of effort, and we appreciate that. And also thanks to their fellow commissioners who provided input and helped us move forward. I think it was great, and I think we agreed that we need to do it again one day. But I just want to say, you know, give out awards, Mr. Chairman. You worked mighty hard. And
well, I appreciate that. I do appreciate the work that all the rest of the board put in. And again, we talked about the real heroes, Dana and Paula, get us all herded up and together. So thank you for that. And Rick and Jennifer and Chad and the rest of the staff who got things ready for us and prepared ahead of time to get it there. So a lot of thanks to go around it. But it was, I think it was an important time. As we mentioned, talking about change, I think both sessions are now up on our YouTube channel. So I know we had some technical difficulties that Ben and Adam were working through diligently on Thursday, but we have everything available now on our YouTube channel. So, Commissioner Smith?
I just want to echo what Commissioner Braswell said. I want to congratulate all my fellow commissioners for being willing to talk about the tough issues that we face, and with a lot of respect for each other, and seeking to try to get the right answer. If you already know the answer to a problem, you don't need to talk about it. And so what we did was wrestle with some problems and have a lot of different opinions, and that's what it takes to get to the right place. And Mr. Chairman, I thought you did a good job being the master of ceremonies, and so it was tiring, but it was two good days.
It was tiring. And also, before we forget, I want to thank Kevin Leonard and the folks at the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners who were our facilitators. Fantastic information, and they did a great job. They had a data analyst who shared some information with us, and I think some of that will be available in a PDF or PowerPoint on our website, but some fascinating information about growth in our county that I had not realized. So, yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I passed up my opportunity to speak, but I would like to say a couple of things. What Commissioner Harris said about the hospital, as a representative to the hospital board, yeah, I grew up in Johnston County, and I knew the reputation that our local hospital had for years back in the 50s, 60s. But since our affiliation with UNC Health, and most recently our affiliation with Rex, under that umbrella, where we can achieve some economies of scale, especially in administrative functions, I think we're going to see even a better level of service and professionalism and expertise than we've ever had. I think we're going to be on par with anybody in Wake County.
I agree. If there's no other reports from the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Mr. Chairman, I move the board to go into closed session for the purpose of consulting with the attorney employed by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A3, and for the purpose of personnel pursuant to NCGS 143-318-11A6.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now going into closed session.